Yeah, I got you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Market Leader Live. Hey, it's your host with the most, your main man, Darren M. Palmer. I'm excited to be here today when we talk about tips to building your social following or whatnot. Hey, I got my man, Sebastian Rusk. Say hello to the people, Sebastian.
Hello, people. Happy Tuesday to ya.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. If you don't mind, just share with us a little bit about yourself for our audience who might not be familiar with you and what you do, and then we'll go deeper.
Sure. So I just got out of prison yesterday, and I'm trying to reestablish myself a little bit because, I mean, come on, I'm like this nut guy with the goatee right behind a brick wall. No, I started my brand Social Buzz TV about 10 years ago from nothing, right on the back of the recession. I don't want to use that delicate word right now because that's a bad word at the moment, and I don't think we're in one. We may be in a temporary one right now, but another conversation for another talk. But on the back of a recession in 2010, out of desperation, that I really needed to reinvent myself. And I'd been on social media since the beginning. So 2004, 2005, I was on LinkedIn, MySpace, and then naturally gravitated over to Facebook. And I think 2005 or 2006, whenever they launched. And I spent 4 years not doing anything but connecting with people that I did and did not want to reconnect with. And then the bottom fell out. I lost everything. I bought 2 one-way tickets back to Miami, where I grew up with my daughter. I was a full-time single dad to a little girl. So I said, it's just time to go back home. So I did that in 2008. And 2008, I'm like, well, I guess this is where we start all over again. Well, there wasn't much going on in 2008 or 2009, heck, even barely 2010. So I sat around as a victim. That was my title for 2 years. I was a victim, feeling sorry for myself on how I got to from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain, back to the bottom of the mountain. Poor, woe is me. Then one day I had an awakening moment, very Tony Robbins awakening moment, where I was like, out of my way. We're going to turn this thing around, and we're going to do that by creating a brand that is sustainable and that's long-term. I used to do direct marketing for realtors. Well, the market dips and there's nobody to sell your product to. So that wasn't the best market to be in. So I decided I wanted to launch a social media brand, and I simultaneously built my personal brand as a speaker, author, coach, trainer, podcast launch extraordinaire, etc., while building Social Buzz TV. And I did this by taking the bus around town, hiding my skateboard in the bushes, wiping the sweat off my brow, walking into Morton's with my fake Rolex, and just selling the dream. Selling the dream that I'm going to help you better understand what you don't know about social media, which is everything. And by the way, I'll help you set up your Facebook page and your Twitter account. And heck, I'll even manage it for you. I mean, I'll come over, wash your kids on the weekend. I'll wash your car. $300 a month. No monthly commitment other than month to month, right? I quickly realized that wasn't a good game plan, but I had monetized Social Buzz TV after spending a year of evangelizing it. So people would, and I did this by doing networking events, and I would have networking events, and then I would bring in sponsors, and then the sponsors would say, hey, maybe you could help me out with my social media. And I started the agency in 2011. A few years later, I wrote a book, my first book, Social Media Sucks If You Don't Know What You're Doing. And I told this whole story of how to build a brand from nothing and what I felt is my personal opinion on what brand should be doing, regardless of whether they feel like it or not, because this is in fact the future. It's not going anywhere, et cetera, et cetera. So fast forward to today. Here we are 10 years later, still standing and laser focused on helping people make their podcast dreams a reality. I really wanted to get into a niche within the social media world because let's face it, the three easiest, lowest entry barrier to entry for any position is personal trainer, realtor, social media expert, manager, right? Just very easy to do, very common these days. And I don't want to be associated with that crowd. I never have wanted to be included with, the crowd per se, because I don't believe that's where the real lucrative business is. More importantly, I don't believe you can do meaningful work when everyone and their brother is doing meaningful work. I mean, maybe you can, but I niched down about 3 years ago, launched a solution called the Podcast Launch Lab. And we help marketers and entrepreneurs go from idea to iTunes in 90 days or less with their first 5 episodes. So being a podcaster myself, I was able to kind of say, hey, I can help you start a podcast because I've started and stopped mine 3 times. And here we are. So we're on a mission this year to help 100 entrepreneurs, marketers and entrepreneurs start a podcast in 2020. So this whole pandemic hitting and everything that's been taking place has thank God been phenomenal for business, because the procrastinators are coming out of the woodwork because there's nothing else better to do. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Awesome, Sebastian, man. I really appreciate you sharing that with our audience.
Sure.
And, if you don't mind, I think that's a perfect segue. The Y Sales Leadership Retreat. Why did you join with Joyce Johnson to be a part of that epic event that's coming up in June?
She bribed me. Joyce and I go way back. I tried to start a church about 4 years ago, and we failed miserably here in Miami. And boy, Joyce supported every ounce of that, disaster, failed attempt of, building a kingdom in Miami. But became a really good friend in that process. Had left Miami, moved back to Texas, but we had stayed in touch. And she's always been a phenomenal supporter of what I've done and my work, and just a real good friend. And, it's one of those things where somebody like that calls you, the answer is almost always yes. And I was just glad that I felt privileged to be involved with it. But I really share whatever her vision is for what she wants to do with Y Sales Network and for these events. So it's just a privilege to have a good friend in life and in business reach out and say, I'd love to have you part of it. And in our calendars and scheduled work, regardless of, COVID or not, I really wanted to go to Bimini. Okay. Did I mention that? I think we all did. My favorite place away from home, but I got involved because I shared Joyce's vision, and she's amazing. She's great people, and amazing people in your tribe, or what this whole journey in business and entrepreneurship and life, for that matter, are really all about.
You know what? And I appreciate you, because I totally believe the same thing about Joyce myself. That's why I'm a part of the project as well. But when we look at creating a social brand that sells, you shared us a little bit about faith. You shared about how you was on the bottom and how you had to get your way back up. Could you speak to the people who can't stand the dirty word sales, but we all are selling daily, and how some people aren't accomplishing their dreams or reaching their destiny because they don't understand they got a negative connotation when it comes to sales? Could you speak to that, how we can create a social brand that sells?
Having an off conversation with yourself about sales is another issue in and of itself that has nothing to do with sales. Somewhere along the line, someone sold you a shitty product. Somewhere along the line, that happened. And that story stayed with you since then. And it's like, this is what happens when I'm sold. So I never want to become that person ever. That story continues in, and I'll give you a quick story on how I'm able to tie these things together. And that is, over the course of the 10 years, it was a wild ride. But about 4 years ago, everything took a stop, a hard stop. And when I met a girl on Tinder, and this girl invited me to a personal development course that rocked my world and forever altered the path of my life forever. And when I came out of it all, which is a lifelong process, but when I was done with the training and the aftermath of the integration and what really shows up when you go in, because it's real ugly when you go in, but when you finally go in and realize the only way through, the only way out is through, you get to learn a lot about yourself, right? So we went back to the childhood. We went back to the first time you feel pain, and first time we started blaming individuals and by the end of it all, I came out of it loving myself, accountable for my own life, my own actions, and everything I do. Imagine that. I stopped blaming people. I accepted my past for what it was, and that it was a gift to pole vault me into this incredible future that God has planned for my life, right? So all of that I was able to shed through that process. But the beautiful part was I was able to become and continue to become who I need to be for my brand. And I know how I show up every single day for the people in my life, for my students, for my daughter, for my friends, for my clients. And to me, that's invaluable information. Why do I share all this? What does this have to do with people that have a problem with sales? Well, the problem that you have with sales probably isn't that you have a problem with sales. It's some unresolved past issues that we refuse to look over. We just continue to lift up the rug and sweep it under. So that's a long-winded answer, I know, but I think number one is that you have a problem with sales. If you're scared of sales, if you're angry with sales, if you have some sort of emotion, negative emotion towards sales, it's worth a closer look to just stop and check in real quick and ask yourself, why do I have a problem with sales? Because here's the deal. Another thing with personal development that, it's a lifelong process for all of us if we're open and willing to do it, is the very fact of enrollment. Now, that's what I like least about the personal development world. You've ever been to a Landmark Forum course? You've ever been to a Tony Robbins course? You are enrolling some fools when you get done with that. You're calling everybody. They want all your friends and family to come to graduation. Of course they do, because they got clipboards and they're ready to wrap everybody up. It's a genius model, but it's about enrollment. And their thought process is, I'm like, this is not enrollment. This is harassment. They're like, no, you by default as a human being enroll people every single day. This course is no different. So sales is an enrollment process. Life is an enrollment process. Faith is an enrollment process. It's a matter of being able to tell a story, make a connection, and bridge that gap between the two. So if you're scared of sales, you don't like sales, and the negative emotion is there, let's just sit with that for a minute and see what shows up. And if it includes blaming other people or a past situation, ding, 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 we may have an answer, ladies and gentlemen.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And you'll be able to hear more from Sebastian at the Y Sales Leadership Retreat. Make sure that you go to ysalesleadershipretreat.com. Make sure that you connect with my girl, Joyce Johnson. Make sure that you sign up. For those who need something to do, you need to have a daiquiri, you need to have a Jameson on ice, on the rocks, whatever it may be, and you want to show up, come up and show up for the happy hour. There you go. There you go. I thought I had a praying church there. I thought I had a praying Mr. Russell, but we want you to connect with Joyce. Make sure you go to Y Sales Leadership Retreat. Make sure that you connect with my girl, Joyce Johnson, to find out more information. We'll leave information in the show notes as well. But part and piece of advice, I want people to sign up for this conference because, like you shared, it's some great information. But if you don't mind, share with us what you will be sharing during your time for the Y Sales Leadership Retreat coming up in June.
We're going to be talking about podcasts and the power of podcasting, because that is what I'm solely focused on right now, with the blinders on a mission to help 100 people start a podcast in 2020. Part of that is the talks that I deliver and being involved with great events like the Y Sales Network is putting on. So we're going to be just breaking down what it takes practical. This isn't just me talking at you. I'm talking with you so I can help you better understand what you don't know that you don't know about podcasting, and also break down a lot of the myths and lies that are created within the whole process of starting a podcast. It's not difficult. You can do it with your iPhone, just like I'm streaming in right now on my phone right now from my home office. It's not a difficult process. We are in a Zoom era. Zoom, Zoom, Zoom everywhere we go, right? That's the way you interview people for your podcast. You hit record and Zoom gives you the audio and the video as soon as you're done with every call. You go to a freelancer site, you hire a podcast editor, he edits the podcast, you upload it to the internet, and you've started a podcast. I want to walk you through that process on how that all works. And then I also want to share my story a little bit about starting and stopping my podcast 3 times, and then finally sticking to it, and then launching a solution that enrolls others in starting their own podcast. Because just like writing a book, I think the best thing that you can do for humanity is start a podcast. Share your story, get your message out there, shift mindsets, change people's lives, and leave this place better than you found it. You have a voice, and I'll leave you with this. If you've been on the fence about starting a podcast and you have a great story to tell, you are being grossly negligent to not launch your podcast. And that also, in the personal development world, I learned, makes you a taker. And nobody wants to be a taker. Everybody wants to be a giver, but nobody wants to be a taker. So, yeah, I'm fired up. I'm ready to bring the podcast thunder.
I love it. I love it. Hey, if you don't mind, Mr. Rush, share with people, how can they connect with you? How can they be a part of the 100 that are getting their podcast done? If you don't mind, please share any social media handles or website information where they can connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. The best thing to do is schedule a free podcast strategy call. You got nothing to lose. It's a great idea to be able to find out if your idea is valid or not. That's what myself and my team can help you do. We're here to tell you the truth. Doesn't always feel good, but we're here to tell you the truth. We're also here to give you tactical strategies. Say, well, hey, maybe this might be a better scenario. At the end of the call, one or two things are going to happen. We're going to try to sell you something, our podcast launch solution, or we're going to see if you have any more questions and give you a tactical plan for you to go and try and figure it out on your own, and know that you can call us back in the event that you fail with that process. So the best way to do that is go to podcastlaunachlab.com/call. And myself, one of my podcast launch specialists, will be available for 15 minutes to answer any question you have about podcasting, and also give you an overview and a strategy of what's possible, doing it on your own or us helping you. But listen, my number one goal and mission is to see you start a podcast. If you want to hire us to do it, hey, that's gravy, icing on the cake. But the most important thing is you call and you say, Sebastian, I started a podcast. That's all that I'm looking for. This time next year, you'll be glad you started a podcast. And then if you want to connect with me personally, LinkedIn. All my attention is on LinkedIn and YouTube at the moment. So search for me, Sebastian Rusk, on LinkedIn. There'll be a link in the show notes I'll send over to you. And also on YouTube, youtube.com/podcast launch lab. There is a library of videos that I've been shooting over the past year to educate, motivate, and differentiate what it means to start a podcast.
Man, definitely. That's market leader content right there from Sebastian Rusk himself. Make sure you follow the Y Sales Network. Make sure that you register for the Y Sales Leadership Retreat. Also, this Thursday, at the time of this being recorded live, if you want to tune in for the happy hour, make sure that you join it as well. I want to be respectful of your time, Sebastian. We got to connect soon, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yes, let's do that. Yes, absolutely. Find me online. Have Joyce connect us. I look forward to connecting further, brother. Thank you so much for this.
Anytime, anytime. Until next time, remember, if you want change, be the change. Be blessed and be great.